dear students, friends, classmates. Welcome back again, and this is ANGeL Shares Ragsak. So this is a new video which tackles a new topic about history. So without further ado, tingnan natin kung ano ang pag-uusapan natin. Okay, so for today's discussion or topic, we would be talking about, Can you read it for me, for us? Okay, very good. Marunong ka nang magbasa. Ayan. So, ang pag-uusapan po natin ngayon ay tungkol sa historical method. So, hopefully, patapos yung ating video ay maintindihan natin kung ano ang historical method, para saan ba to, ano ba ang importansya ng paggamit ng historical method, mga historiador lamang ba ang gumagamit nito. Okay? So, ayan po. Ayan, gusto na niyo ba yung sound? Okay. So, before we define or describe historical method, I'll be showing you images and even quotes that would somehow connect these images, these quotes to historical method. Kasi ang gusto ko, bago kasi natin ito malaman ang importansya, ganun din ang kahulugan at description ng historical method at para saan ba ito, mas malaliman nating maintindihan sa pamamagitan ng pagbibigay ko ng mga images o imahe para kayo na mismo yung mag-connect bakit importante ang historical method sa pag-aaral at pagkaunawa, pagkatuto ng kasaysayan o history. Okay? Una, ito, this one, it's a quote by Soren Kierkegaard, although this image is taken or obtained from the Facebook page of David Avocado Wolf. Okay? But what is important here, it's the quote by Soren Kierkegaard, and it says here, there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. I don't know if you observe this one from people, but I think if you are someone who usually an observer, a keen observer of the behaviors of people and even how they think, you tend to observe that really there are people, even though that is considered to be the truth, people tend to disagree or refuse still to believe as such. Okay? Now, there are variety of reasons, I must say, why people tend not to agree as such. One could be experiences, it could also be his belief, spiritual, or shall I say religious belief that he or she has that might be deviating from, let's just say, what science especially would have to say about a phenomenon or about something. Okay? Hindi lang sa usapin na ganun, pati rin kasi sa usaping pangkasaysayan, you could encounter some people would have to claim that this one really was the happening, or was the story or the account that had happened on that particular event. But some others might say that it is not. Okay? So, kahit sa kasaysayan ay merong ganon. Bakit meron ganon na may pagkakaiba? Kasi nga, di ba, nabanggit natin na history is not the past. History, it's not the entire past. Para klaruhin lang natin. ang mga historiador natin, historians, na sila yung nagsusulat tungkol sa kasaysayan. Sila ay nakakapagsulat. They reconstruct those things that had happened from the past based on the sources that they have, the historical records that they have. So from those available historical records that they have, they would have to connect the dots, quote unquote, connecting the dots. They have to recreate in their minds from those available sources. They would have to interpret. Okay? Now, from that entire past, let's just say, there were people who were there, but not all the entire past, they observed it. So, yung pinapakita ngayon ng paradigm na nasa harap natin. So, not all those things that were observed from the entire past are remembered. So, ganun din, yung recorded. Hindi lahat ng naalala mo ay naalala ay nai-record, at hindi lahat ng nai-record ay nakasurvive, at hindi lahat ng nakasurvive ay naging available, at hindi lahat ng naging available ay nagamit. Diba? If you have to put it into words, ito, nilagay ni Louis Kutchak sa kanyang libro, Understanding History, A Primer to Historical Method. Ang sabi niya, only a part of what was observed in the past was remembered by those who observed it. Only a part of what was remembered was recorded. Only a part of what was recorded has survived. Only a part of what has survived has come to the historian's attention. Only a part of what has come to their attention is credible. Only a part of what is credible has been grasped. Grasp is understood. And only a part of what has been grasped can be expounded or narrated by the historian. Diba? Kaya hindi natin sasabihin that history is the entire past. Kasi hindi lahat ay nakukuha, hindi lahat ay naalala, at sa lahat ng naalala din na hindi lahat ay naitala, and so on and so forth. So history is not really the entire past. Okay? Paano pa pag naging recipient ka of the narrative that was provided to us by the historians? Diba? Kunwari ikaw, you've read something about the narrative of that event that was written by a historian. And then, ikaw yung, let's just say, ikaw yan. And then, the biggest or the outermost part na circle, that's what you think. And then, yung sumunod na pangalawang circle, yun lang yung may lalagay mo or masasabi mo, or you could put it into words. And then, hindi lahat ng what you could put it into words, you could say it to other people. And then, if you've shared something to people, what you do understand or what you've said, what could you say, or what the only thing that you could say to other people. Sa tingin mo ba lahat nun naintindihan niya? So not all those things that you have shared to him, yun yung maintindihan niya. So ang tanong dito, ilan na lang porsyento kumbaga ang alam mo tungkol sa nakaraan, mula dun sa entire past hanggang sa nung nagsulat na ng naratibo ang historiador, hanggang sa nabasa mo, and then nung nabasa mo you have to share it to people, and then nung na-share mo, ilan na lang porsyento yung naintindihan niya. So it could be small portion of the, let's just say, ano talaga yung nangyari nung nakaraan. Diba? That could be a danger. It could be. But, I think, mas mahalaga pa rin na meron pa rin tayong naintindihan, naalala, lalo na, sa kung ano man ang nangyari nung nakaraan. Kasi yun yung identity natin. Diba? Bilang kung ikaw ay isang citizen ng isang bansa, knowing your history, it's actually your identity. Okay? Now, if you're skeptic or doubtful, especially if someone has shared to you about what had happened in the past, now you could be as a historian. Right? Natalakay naman natin from the previous vlog or video, what are historians for? So, sabi nga natin, kahit na estudyante ka man, or hindi ka estudyante, or you have, other profession, and you're skeptic or doubtful of a certain thing because you're an enthusiast of history, now you could work ala historian. Diba? Ala historian or junior historian, or sabi nga natin, pwedeng gawin mo kung paano, kung ano ang ginagawa ng mga historiador para sila ay makapag-interpret ng kanilang kwento tungkol sa nakaraan. 'Di ba? Kasi ang historians, sabi nga natin, usually sila kasi yung nale-left out if we try to study or we try to understand history. We need not to. We have to include the historians, the role of historians to the story that we are actually reading or that we know. Especially if that person, that historian, is the one who actually wrote that book that you are reading about a historic event. Okay? We have to understand also that historians use sources, historical facts, because these sources or historical facts, these are actually their basis of writing a narrative, of writing a story. Okay? Historians have to base their accounts really on source materials. Kaya naghahanap sila ng mga sources nila, no? They make sure also that their sources are legit. They make sure also that their sources are being evaluated by organizations of historians, and these sources are considered to be legit or accepted by the organizations of historians. Historians need to be able to locate, organize the relevant sources on which they will have to base their account or their story or their narrative. Now, that kind of work, when historians have to verify their sources, they have to date them, they have to locate their place of origin, and identify their intended functions. This is actually part of doing the historical method. Okay? So, ano na nga ba yung historical method? Kasi pag sinabi nating historical method, this is the process, according to Louis Gutschak from his book Understanding History, A Primer to Historical Method. This is the process of critically examining and analyzing the records and survivals of the past. So, isa siyang metodo o procedure kung saan ang mga historiador ay tinitignan nilang mabuti, ini-examine talaga nilang mabuti, ina-analyze nilang mabuti. Kung kinakailangan, i-evaluate nila yung mga nakalap nilang mga records or sources and survivals of the past para sila ay makapagsulat ng naratibo o storya tungkol sa event na pinapag-aralan nila. Okay? So, if you are the historian, before you have to write something, before you could narrate something, before you could tell a story with regard to the story of the past, there should be a procedure that must be done before doing so. Okay? Ang mga historiador malamang, lalo na sa isang bansa, meron silang kumbaga standard or they have this agreed guidelines or ground rules that they used for them to write professional history before they could write an academic research na patungkol ito sa kasaysayan. Diba? Kaya kung ikaw ay isang historiador and you don't have any sources with you, or let's just say you've written your narrative, your narration or your story about a certain significant event, and then you did not use any sources with you, primary sources with you, anong klaseng historiador ang katulad mo kung hindi ka gumamit ng primary sources? We have to understand that if there is no facts, historical facts or primary sources that were used, there is no history. Diba? Kasi pag yun ang ginawa mo, wala kang primary sources with you, the one that you are writing, that is fiction and that is not history. So if we say historical method, this is a process wherein pwede mong i-inject din. Pwedeng i-inject ng mga historiador yung mga techniques nila, mga approaches nila, and even the agreed guidelines that they would have to follow before writing their account, their story about what had happened in the past. Okay, and one of which that is essential or very significant in historical method is source criticism, or we call it historical criticism, and that's the thing that we would have to discuss quickly in our next video. But if you would like to have a long discussion or lengthy discussion about source criticism or historical criticism, yan, nasa taas yung link kung saan malalaman nyo yung kung ano ang historical criticism. But again, if we say historical method, this is actually the process wherein the historian would have to examine, analyze, evaluate those sources that they would be using before narrating or before writing their account or story or narration about that particular event being studied. And in historical method also, historians used agreed ground rules for researching and writing academic research or professional history. Now, parang ano yan historical method is actually something that they use as important protocols for them to handle the sources efficiently and effectively. Yan. And under historical method, isang napaka-importanteng pagdadaanan nga nila, yung nabanggit ko kanina, it's source criticism or historical criticism. Okay? Now, of this historical method, di ba sabi nga natin, in historical method, pwedeng historiador gumamit ng iba't ibang techniques or method or approaches on how they would have to attack, let's just say, these facts with them, or the primary sources with them. Would they be using it? Will they be disregarding these primary sources? Would they be very important, or would they be using it, or they will not be using it? Okay, kung magkakasama na yun kaya nga may mga pagkakataon na mga historiador, they're trying to select, or they would have to select their primary sources, because that's the subjectivity of that particular historian, di ba? Kaya malamang pag sila ay nag-interpret na or nag-reconstruct ng kanilang pananaw sa nangyari noong nakaraan, pwedeng iba yung kahinatnan, kasi iba yung technique, iba yung pag-atake nila ng pag-interpret doon or pag-reconstruct doon sa mga nakalap nilang mga ebidensya, or pag sinabi kong ebidensya, these are the sources, the primary sources, or the historical facts. Okay? So, it is inevitable that historians could differ in their interpretation or reconstructing of the past. Now, I would have to give you an example of one historian which has to say something, which has given his statement about the Americans trying to influence the story of our country because of how Americans according to him influence the mind of the Filipino people. So according to him, history has been used to control minds, if not by absolute suppression or fabrication of events, at least by their slight distortion. Okay, now we'll have to continue. The catastrophic result of this is that the colonizers became the unselfish, humane, and selfless partners. Okay, so yung sinasabi dito ni colonizers, these are the Americans. As we all know, the Americans were here in the late 1890s, as early as 1898, and then hanggang 1945. Okay, now let me continue. This invented history by the colonizers became an important component in the progression of colonial consciousness or mentality. The fictional history hides the fact of the insensitive motivations of the colonizers and their native collaborators towards making colonization easier to accept. Okay? This mental conditioning has made it easy for the colonizers to make the colonized believe that the policies implemented by the former is for their own welfare and benefit. Okay? Now, last one, the history perpetrated by the Americans who, in their desire to present themselves as altruistic benefactors rather than conquerors, minimized or concealed from succeeding generations of Filipinos the cruelties committed by their army as well as the fierce resistance of the people. End quote. This is written by Renato Constantino, considered to be a historian and also a journalist, one of my favorite Filipino historians and journalists also. No? So ito nabanggit niya at napansin niya nung panahon ng pananakop ng mga Amerikano. So kumbaga, there is conditioning na nangyayari sa parte ng mga Amerikano, and we have to know and understand their motives, why they have to do as such. So, parang ma-justify yung kanilang pananakop ay something that it is kailangan kasi ganito, ganyan. Diba? But that is from the side of the Americans. But how about from the side of the Filipinos? Diba? Kaya nga, may mga historiador tayo na we have to give importance, kumbaga, yung pantayong pananaw kaysa pansila or panbanyagang pananaw. Diba? Kasi yung pantayong pananaw, tayo yun eh. Diba? Tayo yung tayo yung istorya dito nangyari sa Pilipinas. So, kumbaga, kultura natin, mas naiintindihan natin kung ano ang nangyari talaga nung nakaraan, because that is us rather than them telling our story. Parang ganun yung pantayong pananaw. Pero hindi naman natin ibig sabihin na lahat na lang ng sinasabi ng sa atin yun na yung totoo, and we would have to toss away those historians those foreign historians would have to study the story of our past. It's not. Kung yun naman ay talagang nangyari at ito ay authored by foreign historians at ito ay napatotohanan at ito ay tinanggap ng organized organization of historians, lalo at mga Pilipino, at itong foreign historian na to ay nakapaglatag siya ng mga facts niya, so why not? Diba? I think there is a foreign historian who claimed that the Code of Maragtas and the Code of Calantiao are hoax. Yeah? I think it was cut. Okay? At ito ay thesis niya, at ito ay prinisinta niya sa UST, kung saan yung kanyang mga tawag dito, yung kanyang mga panel members or panelists ay mga Filipino historians. Diba? At makikita nyo na may mga libro kung saan Philippine history textbook na kinikilala nila kung ano ang naging kahinatnan ng research ni Mr. Scott. Okay? That was William Henry Scott, to be exact. Okay? Pero kahit iba-iba man ang sinasabi ng iba-ibang historiador, at sabi nga ni na Howell and Prevenier, Martha Howell and Walter Prevenier, we have to, kumaga ito yung somehow a reminder. Each generation of historians develops its own perspectives, and that our understanding of the past is constantly reshaped by the historian and the world he or she inhabits. It is inevitable that one generation of historians may have that kind of claim to compared to other generations of historians. I think we discussed about this when we talked about what are historians for, and also from another video, what is history. So mas pinakita at mas diniscuss kasi natin doon kung bakit ba nagkakaroon ng iba-ibang interpretasyon at reconstruction ng pagsusulat ng kasaysayan. Okay? So, with this video, with this presentation, let me acknowledge the following. Dr. Maria Florina Aurelius Juan, and even the presentation of Dr. Aileen Vikendipan. And of course, our references, we have Mr. Gutchak, Louis Gutchak, that was written, the book that was written in 1969, Understanding History, a Primer of Historical Method, and Martha Howell and Walter Prevenir, baliktad, it should be Prevenir Walter, from the book From Reliable Sources, an Introduction to Historical Methods. So, yun po, no? Yun. Sana po ulit sa video na ito, no, na ipakita at nalaman at naintindihan po natin kung ano ang ibig sabihin ng historical method at para saan ba ang historical method. Muli ulitin natin na historical method, this is actually a process or procedure wherein historians will have to examine, analyze, and even evaluate those primary sources that they have on hand before they would have to write their narration or story or interpretation about what had happened in the past. Now, from this historical method, one of which is very important that they would have to conduct is historical criticism or source criticism. Kasi nga, di ba, sa historical method, very important yung sources nila. So, they have to make sure that those sources are really legit. Kumbaga, yun ba talaga ay tanggap? Yun ba talaga ay kailangan isalay? Yun ba talaga ay may tuturing na sources? So, meron pong proseso or metodo para sabihin na ang isang testimony o isang manuscript o isang anything that is considered to be a source, primary source, pwede nga ba talagang ituring na primary source yan? Okay? Ngayon, sa tanong din natin kanina, eto bang historical method ay para sa mga historiador lang? Pwede ba natin gamitin bilang estudyante or bilang tayo ay researcher, at pwede natin gamitin itong historical method as our method to gather our data, and from that data we would have to analyze it and make conclusion out of it? Of course, yes. Okay. Historical method, yes, it's used by the historians, but definitely as a student, if you would have to write something, really have the desire and the perseverance and that due diligence really to write something about what had happened in the past, yeah, you could use it. If you're a researcher and you're into origin, deeper understanding or in-depth understanding of the topic, and for you to understand it deeper is to go on the origin of that particular event or that particular, let's just say, institution, organization, or group of persons, or let's just say that kind of yung topic, it's about tawag dito about the black movement, di ba? So, kunwari, ganun, di, pwede mong gamitin yung historical method for you to understand better kung ano yung black movement, kailan nagsimula, at ano yung motives and purpose why there is this black movement. And you could use that. So, it's not just the historians could use historical method. But actually, if you're a researcher and you're into the origin, and that is your purpose really, or your objective is to have an in-depth understanding of that particular event that you would like to decipher or to understand, then why not do it? Use historical method. Okay, so yun po, yan po ay patungkol sa historical method. So sana po ay meron po tayong naintindihan sa pag-aaral at pagtuklas sa kung ano ang historical method sa mga historiador. Ganun din sa pagkaunawa at kahalagahan ng paggamit ng historical method. So again, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, this is in Bigan, Crisologos Street. So, sa mga nakapunta na sa Bigan, alam niyo naman na siguro to. Pag hindi, ayan, may picture kayo. So, hopefully, one of these days, makapunta kayo. So, muli, maraming pong salamat sa pag-stick sa ating video. Thank you very much and hope to see you again in our next video. So again, this is ANGeL Shares. Ang masya ng song na. Ragsak! Ciao! Bye! Take care! Ingat! Tinagal.